If you're listening to this right now, you need to understand something. The stories you're about to hear aren't fiction. They're not creepypastas. They're real confessions from real people who lived through experiences that shattered their sense of safety, their trust in others, and in some cases, their entire lives. Before we begin, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because these stories will stay with you long after this video ends. Trust me on that. Some of what you'll hear tonight will make you question everything you thought you knew about the people around you. About the strangers who smile at your grandmother. About the quiet neighbor who seems so normal. About the friend you think you can trust. And if you've ever felt that cold sensation crawling up your spine when something just doesn't feel right, you'll understand exactly what these people went through. So settle in, lock your doors, and whatever you do, don't skip ahead, because every single moment of these stories matters. Let's begin with a woman we'll call Sarah, and her grandmother, and a man who called himself Cousin Danny. Sarah loved her grandmother more than anything in this world. The kind of love that makes you drop everything, that makes you sacrifice your own life to take care of someone who gave you everything. Her grandmother had dementia, and it was getting worse. Not the gentle kind, where you forget where you put your keys. The kind where reality becomes fluid, where memories blend with imagination, where a predator can walk right through your front door and convince a sweet old woman that he's family. Sarah had moved in to take care of her. Every single day was a battle against the disease stealing her grandmother away, piece by piece. And on this particular afternoon, Sarah came home from running errands expecting to find her grandmother in her usual chair, maybe watching her favorite shows, maybe lost in a memory from 60 years ago. Instead, she walked into something that would haunt her forever. The house was too quiet. That's the first thing she noticed. Her grandmother usually had the TV on, filling the silence with familiar voices. But today, nothing. Just an eerie stillness that made Sarah's stomach drop. She called out. No answer. And then she heard it. Voices coming from the kitchen. Her grandmother's sweet, cheerful tone. And someone else. A man. Sarah's heart started pounding as she moved toward the kitchen, every instinct screaming that something was wrong. And when she stepped through that doorway, she saw him. A stranger, bent over her grandmother's purse, rifling through it like he had every right to be there. His movements were quick, practiced, desperate, and her grandmother, this woman who had raised Sarah with nothing but love and kindness, was standing right there next to him, wringing her hands together. "Can't you find it, dear?" Her grandmother asked this man in the sweetest tone imaginable, like she was talking to a beloved family member, like this was the most normal thing in the world. The man turned his head when he heard Sarah's footsteps. His eyes were wide, jittery, and they held something that made every hair on Sarah's body stand on end. But she didn't back down. "Who the hell are you?" The words came out stronger than she felt. Sarah wasn't a big woman, not intimidating, not someone who could physically overpower this man who looked like he could snap her in half, but she'd be damned if she let him see her fear. Before he could answer, her grandmother's voice cut through the tension with devastating innocence. "This is your cousin Danny, dear. He came for the money, you see." The blood drained from Sarah's face. Cousin Danny. A name that meant nothing to her because this man wasn't her cousin. She didn't have any cousins named Danny. She didn't have any cousins at all. But in her grandmother's mind, twisted by disease and confusion, this predator had become family. "Grandma," Sarah said, her voice steady, despite the terror crawling through her veins, her eyes never leaving the stranger's face. "We don't know this man." Her grandmother just giggled, like Sarah had made the silliest mistake. "Of course you do, darling. He came for the money. He's going to be buying us a new camper." And then she launched into a story about a camping trip they'd taken years ago, about s'mores and starlight and memories that had nothing to do with this moment, while this man stood inches from her, his hands still hovering over her purse. Sarah studied him carefully. No visible weapon, lean and wiry, probably high on something, definitely desperate. She calculated her options in seconds that felt like hours. If he decided to get violent, if he decided that Sarah was a problem that needed to be eliminated, things could go very, very bad. So she made a choice, a dangerous choice, but the only one that might get him out of that house. "Get out right now." Her voice was low, steady, commanding. He stared at her, and she could see him sizing her up, calculating his chances. Could he take her? Could he grab what he wanted and run? Could he hurt them both before anyone heard them scream? And then Sarah added, shifting her tone just slightly, "Follow me out of here. I'll give you all the cash I've got on me. But you're walking out of here right now." The hesitation was brutal. Time seemed to stop as this man decided whether to accept the offer or do something that would end very differently. And then finally, he nodded. Without a word, he shuffled past Sarah toward the front door. She kept her distance, but followed close enough to make sure he didn't double back, didn't change his mind, didn't decide that the promise of cash wasn't worth letting them live. The second he stepped over the threshold, Sarah slammed that door shut, locked it, and leaned against it with her heart pounding so hard she thought her ribs might crack. She waited, expecting him to come back, to bang on the door, to try to kick it down. But he didn't. He just left. Maybe because he'd been caught. Maybe because someone might see him now. Maybe because some part of his broken mind knew he'd pushed his luck far enough. Whatever the reason, he was gone. And here's where I need you to do something for me. If you're getting value from these stories, if you're feeling that adrenaline, that fear, that horrified fascination, hit that like button right now. It helps more people find these true stories, and it lets me know you want more content like this. Now let's get back to Sarah, because her nightmare wasn't over. When Sarah went back to the kitchen, her grandmother was sitting at the table, smiling to herself like nothing had happened. "Remember Disney World?" she asked, drifting seamlessly into another story, completely oblivious to the danger she'd just been in. And that's when Sarah checked. Her grandmother's purse, empty of the small pill organizer she always kept. All of her medication for the week, just gone. In the bathroom, the little hook where her grandmother hung her wedding ring every night, bare. That ring had survived decades of marriage, of life, of love, and now it was just gone, stolen by a man her grandmother thought was family. Sarah didn't need to imagine what might have happened if she hadn't come home when she did. He could have taken so much more than jewelry and pills. Her grandmother, with her failing memory and her infinite trust, could have been persuaded to leave with him. could have been led outside, into a car, into a situation that would have ended in ways Sarah couldn't let herself think about. That was the moment Sarah realized the truth she'd been avoiding. She couldn't do this alone anymore. No matter how much she loved her grandmother, no matter how much she wanted to protect her, if someone could get into the house that easily, trick her that completely, what was to stop it from happening again? Next time, Sarah might not be there. So she made the hardest decision of her life. She moved her grandmother into a nursing home. It tore her apart, but she knew it was for her safety. The staff adored her grandmother immediately. Even in her later stages, she had that magnetic sweetness that made people fall in love with her. Sarah visited as often as she could, and her grandmother always lit up when she saw her. Though sometimes she thought Sarah was her sister, sometimes her mother, sometimes just a kind stranger stopping by. And every now and then, her grandmother would bring up Cousin Danny and the camper. She'd smile about it, like she was remembering a dream, retelling the story as though it were a cherished family memory. Each time, Sarah would just play along, nodding and smiling, never correcting her. It was easier that way. But every single time her grandmother mentioned him, Sarah felt that same chill run down her spine, because the reality was brutal and inescapable. They never had a cousin Danny, and the man her grandmother remembered so fondly wasn't a relative. He was a predator who saw an easy target in a trusting old woman. Sarah tries not to dwell on what could have happened, but sometimes, late at night, she can't help it. Now I need to tell you about a mother we'll call Rebecca. And before I do, I need to warn you, this story is going to be hard to hear. It involves a child, it involves violence, and it involves choices that will make you angry, confused, and heartbroken. But it needs to be told because Rebecca is living with consequences that will haunt her for the rest of her life. And maybe, just maybe, her story will save someone else. Rebecca met Matt when she was young. He was charming, funny, attentive in all the ways that made her feel special. They got married. They had 2 beautiful daughters. Molly came first, and then Janie. Perfect, healthy, happy babies. Life seemed good. Matt was a devoted father. He played with the girls. He made them laugh. He seemed to love them with his whole heart. And Rebecca had no reason to think anything was wrong until the day everything shattered. Janie was just a baby, maybe 6 months old. Rebecca can't remember exactly, and that uncertainty haunts her. She'd stepped out for just a moment, a quick errand. Matt was home with the girls. Janie had been fussy lately, crying more than usual, but Rebecca figured it was teething or gas or just one of those phases babies go through. When she came home, Matt was frantic. Janie wasn't breathing right, he said. Something was wrong. They rushed to the hospital, and what the doctors found made Rebecca's blood run cold. Janie wasn't just sick, she'd been hurt. Badly. Her retinas had nearly detached. A clavicle and 2 ribs were broken. She was hemorrhaging internally. There was enormous pressure in her skull. And the doctors had a name for what had caused all of this. Shaken baby syndrome. Someone had hurt Janie. Someone had shaken this tiny, helpless infant so violently that her brain had slammed against her skull, that her bones had cracked, that she'd nearly died. And Matt, this man Rebecca had trusted with her children's lives, this man who claimed to love them, had been the only one home with her. At first, he denied it. Of course he denied it. He swore he didn't know what happened. Maybe she fell, maybe something else. But the evidence was undeniable. Matt was charged. He served time. And here's where the story takes a turn that's going to make some of you angry. Rebecca's in-laws tried to testify against her to get Matt off the hook. They blamed her. They said she must have done it. They said their son could never do something like that. But miraculously, Janie was released from the hospital 2 months later. She was going to be okay, the doctors said. She was in that lucky 5% of shaken baby survivors who come out completely healed. Rebecca cried with relief. She was just one signature away from divorcing Matt. But then her parents talked to her. They convinced her that having Matt as a father would still be better than having no father at all. He truly loved the girls, they said. He wasn't evil, they said. It was a mistake, they said. And Rebecca, broken and confused and desperate to believe that her family could be whole again, she took him back. Some of you are screaming at your screens right now. Some of you are calling her every name you can think of. And Rebecca says those same things to herself every single day. But here's what you need to understand. She believed the doctors. She believed Janie would be fine. She believed Matt when he said he was sorry, even though he could never quite look her in the eye when he said it. And for years, it seemed like maybe, just maybe, they'd gotten their miracle. Janie grew up beautiful, smart, kind, respectful. She seemed fine until her teenage years, until the day Rebecca walked into Janie's room and saw her daughter seizing so violently it looked like she was dying. The scar tissue in Janie's brain, the doctors explained, the old damage from when she was a baby. It had left her epileptic, and every single seizure Janie had, every time Rebecca watched her daughter's body convulse, every time she held her afterward and felt her shake, Rebecca's hate for Matt renewed itself. Because Janie was innocent. Janie had done nothing wrong, and she was living with the consequences of what Matt had done to her as a helpless baby. Matt could never face Janie after a seizure. His cowardice was stunning, and Janie, beautiful, graceful Janie, never placed any fault on Rebecca or Matt or her sister Molly, even when things got really, really bad. Until 2 years ago when Janie found out what had happened. She'd never had a good relationship with her father. It was like she subconsciously knew her whole life what he'd done to her. And when Rebecca finally told her the truth, Janie said she forgave her mother. She tried to speak to Matt, but he couldn't even look her in the eye. Janie called him a coward, and then she cut them both off. She found full-time work somewhere, changed her phone number, sold the car they'd given her, and sent them the money back, which broke Rebecca's heart. Changed banks, got off their health insurance, which meant her epilepsy medications would cost a fortune now. Refused to tell them her new address. The only connection left is through Molly, her sister, and even that's painful for everyone involved. Before we continue, I need you to do something. If you're not subscribed yet, subscribe right now. These stories need to be heard, and your subscription helps make that possible. Hit that notification bell too, because you don't want to miss what's coming next. Believe me, these stories only get more intense from here. Rebecca says she goes to church now for the first time since childhood. She prays that Janie will call her one day. She tortures herself by looking through baby pictures, remembering when Janie was small and perfect and whole. And her biggest regret isn't giving up her master's degree like she once thought. Her biggest regret is failing to protect her baby girl, her lovely, beautiful Janie, and she lives with that regret every single day, knowing that her choices led to this, knowing that she chose Matt over her daughter's safety, knowing that Janie is out there somewhere, alone, probably still struggling with seizures and wanting nothing to do with the people who should have protected her. Some of you are judging Rebecca right now, and she knows it. She judges herself harder than you ever could, but she wants you to understand something. She made her choice based on love, misguided love. Yes, foolish love, absolutely, but love nonetheless. She thought she was doing what was best for her daughters by keeping their family together. She thought Matt deserved a second chance. She thought the doctors were right when they said Janie would be fine. And now, she's living with the knowledge that she was wrong about all of it. That her daughter is suffering. That her family is broken beyond repair. That there's no going back and making different choices. All she can do is pray and hope and torture herself with what-ifs until the day she dies. That's her story. That's her hell. And she's sharing it because maybe someone out there needs to hear it. Maybe someone else is in a situation where they're considering taking back someone who hurt their child. And maybe Rebecca's story will give them the courage to make a different choice. Now let's talk about a man we'll call Daniel and his neighbor, Ivan. This is a story about how quickly your sense of safety can be destroyed by someone you thought was harmless. Daniel had just moved into what seemed like the perfect apartment with his girlfriend. Great location, good landlord, reasonable rent. Everything seemed ideal. And their neighbor Ivan seemed quiet, maybe a little odd, but harmless. That assessment changed very, very quickly. It started with noise, lots of noise. Footsteps pounding on the ceiling at all hours. Furniture being dragged across the floor. Doors slamming. It was like living under a basketball court. Daniel and his girlfriend tried to be understanding at first. Maybe Ivan worked odd hours. Maybe he had trouble sleeping. Maybe it was just how he lived. But then the yelling started. Loud, angry shouting at odd hours. But here's the thing that made Daniel's skin crawl. There never seemed to be anyone else in the apartment with Ivan. He was screaming at himself, or at someone who wasn't there. The landlord confirmed what Daniel suspected. Ivan had issues, mental health issues that had gotten worse over the past few years. The landlord had tried to manage it, had thought things were under control, but clearly they weren't. And now Daniel and his girlfriend were living directly below someone who was having a very public mental breakdown. Things escalated. Ivan started accusing them of things they hadn't done, claimed they were making noise when they were asleep, said they were spying on him. The paranoia was obvious and terrifying. And then came the night that changed everything. Daniel woke up to heavy footsteps right outside their apartment door. Back and forth, pacing, like someone was working up the courage to do something. He looked through the peephole and saw Ivan standing there, just standing there in the hallway, staring at their door. The police were called multiple times, but without Ivan doing something overtly threatening, without him actually breaking in or making specific threats, there wasn't much they could do. Until finally, after weeks of escalating behavior, they had enough for a warrant. When the police took Ivan away, Daniel and his girlfriend watched from their apartment, packing their things, knowing they'd never spend another night in that perfect apartment they'd been so excited about. Because once your sense of safety is shattered like that, once you've lived in fear of the person above you, you can never get it back. The landlord was generous with reimbursement, understanding that his judgment call about Ivan had gone catastrophically wrong. Ivan was released on bail the next day with conditions. Everyone's waiting for a court date now, and Daniel is waiting for the day he has to testify, to face Ivan again, and he's praying it'll be the last time he ever has to see him. But here's the detail that makes this story even more disturbing. Daniel did some digging on social media and found Ivan's Facebook profile. Ivan hadn't posted in 3 years, which lined up with when the landlord said he started having problems. But the posts from before that break were bizarre. Dozens of posts about a relationship he was in, never naming the person, never getting any responses, not even likes or comments. It seemed like these posts were made toward an anonymous person who never interacted with them. No one else commented either. It was like Ivan was in a relationship that existed only in his head. And for 3 years, Ivan had been living in a break from reality. Whether Daniel and his girlfriend had done anything to trigger his paranoia, or whether it would have happened regardless, they'll never know. All they know is that they were living below someone who wasn't connected to the real world anymore. And they're lucky to have gotten out when they did. I want you to think about something for a second. How well do you really know your neighbors? The person who lives above you, below you, next to you. You might see them in passing, smile, wave, make small talk about the weather. But do you really know what's going on in their lives? In their heads? These stories remind us that sometimes the most dangerous people are the ones who seem the most normal until they're not normal anymore. And by then, it might be too late. If you're enjoying this content and you want more stories like this, smash that like button right now. It genuinely helps, and it tells me you want to hear more real stories from people who've lived through the unimaginable. Let's keep going. Now, I need to tell you about a woman named Kat and a man named John. This is a story about manipulation, about love bombing, about how someone can worm their way into your life so completely that you don't see the danger until you're trapped. Kat had just gone through a bad breakup, the kind that makes you feel worthless and desperate for validation. And that's exactly when John found her on Tinder. He was perfect, smart, funny, shared her interests. They talked for hours. He seemed genuinely interested in everything about her. He made her feel special in a way her ex never had. It moved fast, maybe too fast, but Kat was riding high on the attention. Within weeks, they were inseparable. He wanted to see her constantly. He texted her all day. He made grand gestures. Everything seemed like a fairy tale. Except fairy tales don't usually involve meeting someone's mother on the second date. John's mother, Karen, was intense from the start, overly involved in John's life in ways that seemed wrong for someone his age. She had opinions about everything: what Kat wore, what she ate, how she spent her time. And John just let it happen. Worse, he seemed to encourage it, like his mother's approval was more important than Kat's comfort. Red flags were popping up everywhere, but Kat ignored them. She was so desperate not to be alone, so desperate to prove her ex wrong about her, that she convinced herself this was what real love looked like. Until the day John's mask started to slip. It started with small criticisms. Her clothes weren't nice enough. She should wear more makeup. Why didn't she smile more? Then came the control. Who was she texting? Where was she going? Why was she talking to that person? The isolation happened so gradually that Kat didn't notice until she looked around one day and realized all her friends had stopped calling. She'd canceled plans so many times to be with John that they'd given up on her. And Karen, John's mother, was always there, always watching, always commenting, always making Kat feel like she wasn't good enough for her precious son. The psychological manipulation was masterful. John would tear Kat down, make her feel worthless, make her think she was lucky he even wanted her. And then he'd build her back up with grand gestures and promises, making her feel like she couldn't live without him. It's called trauma bonding, and it's devastatingly effective. The breaking point came when John showed up at Kat's apartment unannounced in the middle of the night, drunk and angry about something she hadn't done. He screamed at her, accused her of cheating, called her names that made her feel like she was nothing. And when she tried to defend herself, he grabbed her. Not hard enough to leave a bruise, not hard enough to call it assault, but hard enough to terrify her. That was the moment Kat realized she was in danger, real danger, and she had to get out. Breaking up with John was one of the hardest things Kat ever did because he didn't accept it. He showed up at her apartment, texted her hundreds of times, called from different numbers when she blocked him, got his mother involved, who called Kat horrible things and blamed her for breaking her son's heart. It took months for them to finally leave her alone. And Kat is still dealing with the trauma, still second-guessing herself, still wondering how she let someone manipulate her so completely. Her story is a reminder that abusive relationships don't always start with violence. Sometimes they start with someone who seems perfect, who love bombs you, who makes you feel special until you're so emotionally dependent on them that you can't see the chains until they're already locked. If you're in a situation like this, if someone in your life is making you feel crazy, if you're isolated from everyone who cares about you, that's not love. That's control. And you need to get out before it gets worse. Because it always gets worse. We're going to shift gears now to a story that's going to hit different. This is about a man we'll call Chris and his adopted son, Perry. And it ends in a way that's going to devastate you. So take a breath, because this one is brutal. Chris was a counselor who worked with troubled youth. He dedicated his life to helping kids who'd fallen through the cracks, who'd been failed by the system, who needed someone to believe in them. When he met Perry, a teenager in foster care with a rough past, Chris saw potential. He saw a kid who just needed stability and love. So he took Perry in, adopted him, gave him a home and a future. Perry seemed to thrive. He graduated high school. He had a girlfriend we'll call Amy. He worked a part-time job. He lived with Chris and their pug Murphy. On the surface, everything looked fine. But Perry had demons. He'd told Amy about his suicidal thoughts, and she'd told Chris, who did everything he could to get Perry help. Therapy, medication, support. Chris loved Perry like his own son, would have done anything for him. And that love, that devotion, that unwavering belief in Perry's goodness ended up being Chris's downfall, because one day Perry killed him, brutally, violently, in their own home. And then Perry stuffed Chris's body into their freezer and went to hang out with friends like nothing had happened. He played video games, told jokes, acted completely normal, while the man who'd given him everything was decomposing in a freezer. It took days for anyone to find Chris's body, and when they did, the details were so horrifying that people who'd known Perry their entire lives couldn't reconcile the smiling kid they knew with the monster who could do something like that. Perry tried to plead insanity, but he was deemed competent. He pleaded guilty and got 30 years to life. But the question everyone's still asking is why? Why did Perry kill the man who loved him? The man who'd saved him? The man who dedicated his life to helping people like him? There's no satisfying answer. Mental illness, psychopathy, something broken inside Perry that no amount of love could fix. Chris spent his life advocating for kids like Perry, and one of those kids took his life. The center where Chris worked is named after him now. So is the street it sits on. But those honors feel hollow compared to the loss. Amy, who dated Perry, who'd spent time in their house, who'd known Chris and loved him like a father figure, is still processing the trauma, still wondering if there were signs she missed, still feeling guilty for not seeing the danger lurking in someone she thought she knew. This story doesn't have a lesson. It doesn't have a moral. It's just a tragedy, a good man destroyed by someone he tried to save. And it's a stark reminder that sometimes, no matter how much love you give, no matter how hard you try, some people can't be saved. Before we move on, I want to ask you something. Have you been commenting? Have you been sharing your own experiences? Because that's what makes this community so powerful. The stories, yes, but also the conversations they spark. So drop a comment right now. Tell me which story has affected you the most. Tell me if you've experienced something similar. Let's build a community where these stories matter and where people feel heard. Now let me tell you about a physical therapist we'll call Lisa and her patient Lynn. This story is about how quickly a normal day can turn into a nightmare. Lisa visited elderly patients in their homes to provide physical therapy. She'd been seeing Lynn, an 82-year-old woman, every week for about 3 months. Sweet woman, no issues. Everything seemed routine. Until the day Lisa showed up and Lynn's behavior had completely changed. Lynn seemed agitated, paranoid even. She kept looking toward the back of the house like she was expecting someone. When Lisa asked if she was okay, Lynn whispered, "He's been here. He watches me." Lisa assumed Lynn was talking about a family member, maybe confused, maybe having some cognitive issues. But then Lynn grabbed her arm hard and said, "He comes through the back. He takes my things. He says he'll hurt me if I tell anyone." That's when Lisa's professional training kicked in. This wasn't confusion. This was genuine fear. She asked Lynn to show her what the man had taken, and Lynn led her to a bedroom where drawers had been rifled through, jewelry boxes emptied, medication missing. Someone was definitely coming into Lynn's house. Whether it was happening while she was home or while she was out, someone was violating her space and stealing from her. Lisa called the police immediately. They found signs of forced entry at a back window. Small, easy to miss if you weren't looking for it. Someone had been breaking in regularly, taking what they wanted, and threatening Lynn to keep her quiet. An elderly woman living alone, the perfect target. Thanks to Lisa's quick action, the police set up surveillance. Within a week, they caught the person responsible, a neighbor's son. Someone Lynn had known for years, someone she'd probably smiled at and made small talk with, and he'd been terrorizing her in her own home. This story is a reminder that elderly people are often targeted by predators because they're vulnerable, isolated, and less likely to report crimes out of fear or confusion. If you have elderly relatives or neighbors, check on them. Pay attention to changes in behavior. Ask questions, because sometimes, like with Lisa and Lynn, intervention can save someone from a situation that could end tragically. Let's talk about something that's going to make your skin crawl. A Reddit user shared an experience about working a business trip and realizing the woman they were traveling with was having some kind of mental break. It started normal enough. Colleagues on a work trip, staying in the same hotel, grabbing dinner together. But then, back at the hotel, things got weird. The woman started talking about things that didn't make sense. Her stories contradicted each other. Her mood shifted from friendly to unsettling in seconds. She kept staring at this Redditor with an intensity that felt wrong, invasive, like she was looking through them instead of at them. And then she started making comments that felt sexual in nature, inappropriate, uncomfortable. The Redditor tried to politely excuse themselves, but the woman followed them into the hallway, still talking, still staring, still creating this atmosphere of wrongness. When the Redditor finally got back to their room and locked the door, they stood there for an hour, trying to process what had just happened. The next day, the woman acted completely normal, like the previous evening hadn't occurred. No acknowledgement, no apology, just regular work conversation. It was like she'd been a different person the night before. Later, the Redditor learned from another coworker that the same woman had made a move on him during a different trip. That's when they realized this was a pattern. This woman had episodes, breaks from reality, whatever you want to call it, and their coworkers were just expected to deal with it. This story is unsettling because it highlights how uncomfortable situations can occur in professional settings and how people are often expected to just ignore or accept behavior that makes them feel unsafe. The Redditor is certain they'll never spend time alone with that woman again. And honestly, who could blame them? We're in the final stretch now, and I've saved some of the most disturbing stories for last. So if you're still with me, if you're still listening, take a second to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Turn on notifications, because the stories coming up next are going to stay with you for a long time. Let me tell you about a woman living in a rented house with several roommates. Everything seemed fine at first. Everyone got along, kept to themselves. Normal housemate situation, except she started noticing things on weekends when her roommates would leave and she'd be alone in the house. Footsteps on the floor above when no one else was home. Doors opening and closing. The sound of someone moving through the house. At first, she rationalized it. Old house noises. Someone forgot something and came back. Her imagination. But then it happened when she was awake, alert, and certain she was alone. She'd hear footsteps in the basement, go to check, and find no one there. She'd hear someone on the stairs, see a shadow move, but when she investigated, the house was empty. She posted about it on the house Facebook page, asking her roommates to let her know when they'd be home. They thought she was joking. They laughed it off, made jokes about ghosts. But she wasn't joking. One weekend, When all her roommates confirmed they wouldn't be home, she was on the phone with her boyfriend when she heard those same footsteps upstairs. She told him she was going to check. He told her to go ahead, still thinking she was being paranoid. As she climbed the stairs, she heard the footsteps move toward the second floor, then up to the attic. When she reached the main floor, no one was there. All doors were locked, no signs of entry. But here's what made her blood run cold. She found a window in the attic that had been pried open from the outside. Someone had been coming into the house. Someone had been moving through their home while they slept, while they were away, while they thought they were safe. The police were called. They found evidence that someone had been accessing the house regularly. No prints, no DNA, nothing that could identify who it was. Just the knowledge that for weeks, maybe months, someone had been treating their house like their own personal playground. The Redditor moved out. So did the other roommates. And to this day, she doesn't know who was in that house or what they wanted. She just knows she'll never feel safe in a rental house again. This story is a reminder that our homes, our safe spaces, can be violated in ways we never imagine. And sometimes, the paranoia you feel isn't paranoia at all. It's your instincts telling you something is very, very wrong. Let me end with a story that's going to hurt your heart. A 7-year-old girl living in a small western town. Tight-knit community. Safe neighborhood. The kind of place where kids play in the streets and everyone knows everyone. When a new family moved in with a daughter the same age, it seemed perfect. A new friend for her and her group. But this family was different. Strange. It started small. The new girl, Ella, and her family were overly religious in a way that felt performative. The father, Mr. Cyrus, started inviting the neighborhood girls over for play dates. And slowly, so slowly that no one noticed until it was too late, those play dates changed. The girls had to wear dresses. They had to participate in Bible studies. Mr. Cyrus started giving sermons about heaven and hell, scaring these 7-year-old kids with talk of eternal damnation. And then he started doing things that felt wrong. Hypnosis exercises, making them feel special, chosen, like they were part of something important. The grooming was textbook. Isolate, create dependency, make them feel special, convince them they're doing something good, something holy, something their parents would approve of. By the time anyone realized what was happening, Mr. Cyrus had been manipulating these girls for months. The full extent of what he did, the psychological damage he caused, that's something these women, now adults, are still processing. Because Mr. Cyrus was careful. He never did anything overtly criminal. He never left evidence. He just warped their minds and made them feel complicit in something they didn't understand. This story ends without a satisfying conclusion because that's how these things often go. The community was shocked. The family moved away. And the girls were left to process what had happened to them, with parents who didn't know how to help because they didn't understand the depth of the manipulation. It's a story about how predators hide in plain sight, especially when they wrap themselves in religion and righteousness. And it's a reminder to parents to trust their instincts. If something feels wrong, even if you can't articulate why, listen to that feeling. Your kids are depending on it. We've reached the end of these stories, and I want to thank you for staying with me through all of this. These aren't easy stories to hear. They're not comfortable. They're not fun, but they're real and they matter. If you've made it this far, do me a favor. Hit that like button. Subscribe if you haven't already. Drop a comment telling me which story affected you the most. Share this video with someone who needs to hear these stories. Because the more we talk about these experiences, the more we share them, the more power we take away from the people who want to keep them hidden. These stories remind us that the world can be dangerous, that the people we trust can betray us, that our safe spaces can be violated, that sometimes, no matter how careful we are, bad things happen. But they also remind us that survivors exist, that people live through these experiences and come out the other side, that sharing these stories helps others recognize danger, and that we're all in this together, trying to navigate a world that can be beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. If you're dealing with something similar to any of these stories, please reach out to someone, a friend, a family member, a therapist, the police, whoever you need. Don't suffer in silence. Don't let fear keep you trapped, because your story matters too. And there are people who want to help. Stay safe out there. Trust your instincts. And remember, the most dangerous people are often the ones who seem the most normal until they're not. I'll see you in the next video.